The United States have 50 states, 2 of which are Virginia and West Virginia. However, if you look at older maps of the United States from before the Civil War, West Virginia doesn't exist, and all of its territory is shown as a part of Virginia. That's because West Virginia broke off of the state of Virginia during the American Civil War, becoming an official state in 1863. However, there is a serious argument that West Virginia's existence as a state is illegal. Well, okay, maybe not illegal, but unconstitutional? Wait, isn't that the same thing? Yeah, technically unconstitutional is about as illegal as you can get in the United States, but in the legal system outside of the Constitution, West Virginia technically is allowed to exist thanks to a few Supreme Court cases. So then why is West Virginia arguably unconstitutional? The US Constitution has articles about admitting new states to the Union, and under Article 4, Section 3, there is the following clause. New states may be admitted by the Congress into this Union, but no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state, nor any state be formed by the junction of 2 or more states, or parts of states, without the consent of the legislatures of the states concerned as well as of the Congress. With West Virginia being created out of Virginia, this would appear to violate this clause unless Virginia gave consent to it. This is where the issues arise. Firstly, some would argue that this semicolon changes the law. Part 1 of this sentence essentially saying no state can be created within the jurisdiction of any other single state. Part 2, separated by the semicolon, mentions making a new state out of multiple existing states. The mention of requiring consent from the states in Congress is separated by a comma, meaning that the consent rule is attached to Part 2, but debatably not attached to Part 1. Since West Virginia was only made out of one state, then perhaps even if Virginia did consent to West Virginia, it still wouldn't be allowed anyway. The other issue is, of course, Congress approved of West Virginia, but whether Virginia did is up for debate and comes down to a lot of technicalities you would need to argue for. On April 17th of 1861, a Virginian convention approved of secession from the Union. But the same convention required a statewide vote of the people to approve secession to make it official. That vote was going to be set for May 23rd of that same year. But Virginia's governor signed an alliance with the Confederate government on April 24th and sent delegates on the 29th. The northwestern counties that would later become West Virginia made their own convention to create their own government on May 13th. Lincoln used these technicalities of Virginia essentially joining the Confederacy before the voters approved of it on May 23rd as evidence that an insurrectionist faction had hijacked the Virginian government, meaning that those actions were illegal. Therefore, he argued, since the government of the northwestern counties was the only entity claiming to be a government in Virginia not under rebel control, this government was recognized by Lincoln as the true government of Virginia. Obviously, there's an advantage of recognizing this government, as the Union could send troops into the area and get a strategic advantage for the Union in the Civil War. But it was furthermore a part of Lincoln's overall strategy of treating the secessions of the Confederate States as insurrections, which made it easier to ready troops for since there was still a debate on the legality of secession in general. By 1863, though, this pro-Union government still voted to secede the area from Virginia, even though it was seen as the representative of Virginia. So this led to the debate on whether this was a case of Virginia consenting to a state's creation out of its carved territory, or whether this was just illegal. However, the pro-Union Congress decided to just say, who cares, there's no time for this, and they approved of the statehood of West Virginia anyway. Thus, the state was born. After the Civil War, secessionist Virginia was restored to the Union, and they did not recognize West Virginia, even going so far as to pass a resolution in December of 1865 emphasizing that they view the formed government in those West Virginian counties as illegal, and therefore all actions including the campaign for statehood were illegal and rescinded. However, due to Reconstruction and everyone just kind of done with fighting over secession at this point, they couldn't really enforce that. Yet, in 1871, a dispute over 2 counties on whether they belonged to West Virginia or Virginia managed to make its way to the Supreme Court in the form of Virginia v. West Virginia. These were counties that were added on to West Virginia by a referendum in 1863 after the formation of that pro-Union government, but only a couple of months before they were admitted as the state of West Virginia. I do not want to get into every detail of this case because that would be a headache, but to sum it up, the Supreme Court in a 6-3 vote sided with West Virginia. Basically, one of the reasons for siding with West Virginia was that West Virginia at the time of those referendums wasn't the state of West Virginia yet, but rather the recognized government of Virginia, even if the state of West Virginia was already planned out and about to happen. Therefore, by that logic, the government of Virginia was approving a transfer of territory from itself to the planned state of West Virginia. However, this ruling did a weird thing where by recognizing these course of events, it recognized West Virginia as a state that Virginia transferred territory to. But they did not ever technically declare on whether West Virginia's secession from Virginia itself was legal or illegal. It was just working with the de facto situation at hand. So West Virginia was a legally recognized entity as far as this case was concerned, but that doesn't mean that West Virginia's existence is constitutional. But of course, people considered it a settled issue anyway, so it was never brought up. There are some arguments that the other Virginia v. West Virginia case in 1911 also recognizes West Virginia, because the state of Virginia's arguments ironically argued for the legality of West Virginia secession, just so it could be forced to pay off its debt that it owed to Virginia. Since all justices of the Supreme Court unanimously sided with Virginia, some would therefore argue that they were accepting the legal arguments for West Virginia's statehood. On the other hand, nowhere in the official case ruling do they discuss the legality of West Virginia's existence. So, arguably, the question is still up in the air. Now, with all of this in mind, one could argue that this was harmless. I checked every presidential election after West Virginia became a state, and if it somehow never became a state, it would have changed the ultimate outcome of 0 elections. But wouldn't it be funny if we just found a way to bring this question up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court for some reason decided West Virginia was illegal and had to rejoin Virginia? I mean, West Virginia currently has 1 senator from each party, meaning if we tried this, it wouldn't upset the balance of power at all. So I say no harm, no foul. Let's go for it, just for fun. I'm Emperor Tigerstar, and I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe, but also if you want to support this channel, I have a Patreon. I'm making it a goal this year to do YouTube full time, and any amount of support from you would be greatly appreciated.